Thank you for joining us. And I'm curious, based on the cuts today, roughly 10% of the workforce, what changes will Canadians notice?
Well, I hope very much that they won't notice too much, because we're not just taking a razor cut across the board. Adrienne, what we tried to do in each of our divisions is look at strategically how could we do and deliver our programming to Canadians in a more efficient fashion. So wherever possible, doubling down on technology and automation. So my hope is that certainly in local news and in the regions, there won't be that a dramatic an impact for our audiences.
Well, if the audiences aren't going to notice that much of a dramatic impact, did you need those positions?
Well, we've been operating as a public broadcaster in traditional television and radio for 80 years. So we have a lot of talent and positions in the company that over the years, as we transition to digital, we've been able to evolve how we produce our content. But having said that, I didn't finish my thought. Where the public may, in fact, see some difference is in the area of primetime television in particular, where we have also announced a cut of 40 million in programming. So that's 25 million for CBC and 15 million for Radio-Canada. So fewer programs, new programs on GEM, for example. Perhaps not all the renewals of your favorite series, and perhaps fewer episodes of some of your favorite series.
And so when do you think those changes will be noticeable?
As I said today, what we've done in this plan is a progressive, gradual rollout of cuts over 12 months. And as painful as that is, our thought was we needed to be fully transparent because we are in bargaining with our Canada Media Guild.
So what then won't be cut? So in other words, what won't you touch?
Well, I have to say, Adrienne, every single department, every division in the company, to reach a number as big as 125 million, everybody had to give. And so there isn't one area that won't be touched. What we did was we tried to make decisions deliberately and thoughtfully so that we can plan for the future.
I want to talk about journalism for a moment. You know, we've seen some of CBC's competitors cut the vast majority of their foreign reporting, their in-depth reporting at a time when it's never been more important. CBC also has a presence in smaller communities in Canada that others don't. Will you touch those areas too?
When we went into this exercise, we communicated with all of our leaders, let us protect as much as we can our journalism, and let us protect the priorities that we've stated time and time again with respect to equity and diversity, about improving representation on our screens and behind the camera.
How did it get to this point?
You know, we're not immune. CBC Radio-Canada has the enormous privilege of public funding. It's something that we are grateful for. And we also have different obligations than our private sector colleagues. We serve minority language communities in areas outside of Quebec for francophones. We're in the north. These are markets that will never be commercially viable, but it's important work and it's absolutely core to our mission. But we also have the same pressures with respect to inflation, cost of production, cost of operations, declines in revenue related to our traditional television services. All of that has created a perfect storm, and the pressure, the unbelievably fierce competition from the foreign streamers that accelerated and was amplified coming out during the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic.
Sounds like something that's spread very thin.
We are enormously spread thin. I mean, it's just incredible. This organization has the same budget that it had 30 years ago when it was only doing television and radio. Not only, mostly. Mm-hmm. And today we do television, we do streaming video, we do radio, we do podcasts, and we're online with cbc.ca. So we have incredibly expanded because we had to. We had to go where the audience was going. And yet, we don't want to abandon our loyal audience that's still watching us on TV or listening to us on radio. So that's the spreading thin part, for sure.
But when someone in your life is spread too thin and you're having an honest conversation about it, very often the most basic advice is you've got too much on your plate, right? Something's got to go. So what's got to go?
Well, in this exercise, what we really asked ourselves is there a way we can do it smarter, better, and more efficiently? So in terms of production, and we will reduce the number of shows overall. And so we'll have to make those hard choices in the coming months.
The Prime Minister has asked the Heritage Minister to update CBC Radio Canada's mandate. So if CBC can't do everything that the mandate currently requires with the budget offered, what would you advocate changing about CBC's priorities?
I believe that our mandate, as described in the Broadcasting Act, is absolutely essential to our democracy and to cultural expression in this country. We're here to inform, enlighten, and entertain. And I would be very sorry to see that mandate changed. I think what government is referring to is our financial model and how we do things and how we operate in the marketplace. We clearly need an improvement to the ecosystem. We know that that a healthy democracy benefits from the presence of a public broadcaster. We've seen that in all the European countries and in many, many reports around the world. So how do you maintain a healthy ecosystem that is Canadian owned and operated in the face of the presence of unregulated digital giants that have the advantage of worldwide revenues when the private broadcasters and CBC Radio-Canada can only benefit from revenues that we earn in our own country.
What about CBC going ad-free?
Well, you know, a lot of people feel that they'd like to see an ad-free CBC, and of course we are ad-free on radio, and there's some great advantages to that. But today, that portion of our budget is considerable, over $250 million and even more during an Olympics Games year. So if we had to cut $250 million without advertising, that would be a very, very deep cut to services to Canadians. And that's always been the balancing act. We live with the advertising, and by the way, it brings us closer to the market in many ways. And but it does fund a lot of our programs.
I'm just curious about something. I'm going to presume no bonuses this year. I mean, the Canadian Taxpayer Federation said a Freedom of Information request showed 16 million were paid in bonuses in 2022. Can we establish that that is not happening this year?
It's too early to say where we are for this year. We'll be looking at that like we do all our line items in the coming months.
So there's a chance bonuses could still happen at a time when jobs are being cut?
I'm not going to comment on something that hasn't been discussed at this point. So.
Okay. Well, detractors say that, you've heard it, this country doesn't need the CBC. Won't a CBC that's able to do less in a way make the case for them?
I believe that Canadians, and I know that 75% of Canadians still consider CBC a trusted source of credible news. And about the same percentage, that is the majority of Canadians, believe that CBC is good value for money. At $33 per capita annually, that's about a dime a day that Canadians are paying for CBC Radio-Canada. The lowest financed public broadcaster among the 17 that are measured in Western democracies today. So I honestly believe the work that we have to do here at the CBC Radio-Canada over the coming months is to make it clear to Canadians to stand up for the public broadcaster that they depend on. We saw that during the evacuation in Yellowknife, during the crisis, the climate crisis throughout this summer, and in the Israeli-Gaza conflict, and in the Ukraine. Without the presence of your public broadcaster, what would we have? What other service would connect the country coast to coast to coast in both official languages, in 8 Indigenous languages, the way CBC Radio-Canada does.
All right, Catherine Tait, thank you.
Thank you.